So that brings us to who are the we? And I know that my titling was like how catalyzing out of love. This is out of love. It may seem like, is that love? Yes, and I'll make sure I tie the bow on that. But for the past 8 years, I've been traveling in the U.S., visiting various geographic areas as an advocate for black land ownership. Really, I've been trying to understand how you have 96% of privately owned rural land owned by people of European descent. That means all the black folks, all the Latinx folks, everybody else is in 4%. How is that even possible? And through that, I've been to ghost towns, major metropolises, stayed on couches, stayed in Airbnbs, hotels. I spent a lot of time talking to people, like whether it's conference attendees, rideshare drivers, random folks on the street. Like I talk to a lot of people. I talk to nature, go out to where there are very few people. And two common threads of conversation and phraseology stand out to me from the thousands of people that I've spoken to. The use of self-centric, often Eurocentric, nomenclature and taxonomy, as well as a propensity to use apocalyptic-level statements, hyperbolically, to persuade and prompt social justice. Like, this is, these are people I tend to be around. That's my homegirl. They have a goat farm, and the kids learn how to ride. And this is like a wild kid, born during a pandemic, did not socialize, and the parents don't say no. So this kid is off the hook, wild. She's going to change the future. And so I've talked to a lot of folks. And it's me on a horse, right? But here, the two phrases I get would be like, an example is like, we are destroying the planet. We're responsible for the loss of X number of species. We're going to be the reason our grandkids can't play outside without air filters. If we don't do something about carbon capture, our reliance on fossil fuels will kill us and the planet. If we don't stop climate change, the seas will be too hot to sustain microbial life, and we will destroy the seas. If we don't figure out what to do with all the waste and trash, we'll poison ourselves and humanity will suffer. If we don't stop our excessive use of energy and go green, we'll continue to exploit the earth in an unsustainable manner, leading to economic collapse and environmental destruction. If we don't figure out how to manage the developing world's use of industrial manufacturing and mining, they'll destroy some of the few remaining areas of the globe that still have old growth forests and massive undeveloped lands. Well, the question I have to ask is, in all this, who is the we that we're talking about? By the way, these are some of the early folks who started, I believe, the Sierra Club. Who are the we that we're talking about? Why do people keep saying we? What we is killing the dolphins and sea turtles because we keep using plastic straws? What we should feel guilty for all the exploitative land misuse, pollution, and mentalities that lead to profit over life? Who is this ubiquitous, universal we? Now, this is me and my homies when I was in high school. And in this picture are doctors, lawyers, a friend that got shot by the police, all different types of people. But this was we for me growing up, all right? Now, are we projecting these Eurocentric notions and colonist history on the people that are not linked to that history? Are we missing perspectives because there's an assumed course of action to be taken instead of gathering more information? How does it feel when I, as a black person, get berated about the multimillionaires flying their jets around the world, polluting the environment? How do I feel being told that if I don't use a metal straw, I should feel bad about all the microplastics in the world? What does it sound like when I'm pressured to save the entire world with my singular actions based on multi-general, quasi-liberal guilt complex that I don't really have? Now, I got paid to photograph this protest, and people got paid to go up there and get arrested. Now, it's also very effective for the media. Lawyers knew what was going to happen. They got a permit from the police to stage their protest. There's all types of stuff going on in conservation that confuses the hell out of me. But it seems to be what's necessary to get people to wake up and listen. But how does it all look to me? Am I supposed to be part of this we? Am I going to risk getting arrested for an organization to get a write-up? Questions, all right? So another question that emerges is, why aren't the people in conservation and social justice aware of who the we is? Like, who is we that we're speaking about? Who are you envisioning? And I'm asking a lot of questions. If you have a piece of paper or your phone, there are some things that may be good to write down, because I'm going to bring it up in about 15 minutes. But who is the we that you envision? And so when we talk about like objective reality, relative reality, That's a Leviathan, Thomas Hobbes here. A lot of us have taken philosophy and critical thinking courses. We understand that like facts are tied to hegemony. We understand that they're dominant social narratives and guiding actions as paradigms that are taken as facts. We learn about the diversity of social experience. We're taught about rational meaning, the fluidity of symbols, relativity. We all have a different experience. We learn about Eurocentrism and the centering of white maleness and the white male experience in our culture. But when it comes to environmental and climate justice, why do we forget it? Why do we forget to practice our understanding? Why do we create these scenarios where white folks forget that we aren't responsible for all that is wrong in the world? So, I'm serious. As humans, as a black man, as a person from a community that's been fighting for justice for over 400 years through the destruction of African civilizations, the captivity of people, the transatlantic slave trade, Jim Crow, civil rights, etc., that has been part of the fighting history in the culture that I come from. What does it sound like when you say we are ruining the world? Did we develop nuclear technology and drop the bomb on Nagasaki and Hiroshima? That's my other homie, OJ. Was he the problem out here? Now, from my perspective, did we develop any of these technologies? We have been around, and the we that I've been around has been the target of some of the same exploitative, inhumane, profit-driven, anti-human practices as our planet. We were used as a natural resource and still are. Our neighborhoods were often dumping grounds for the toxins. Our places of work and living, like the structures, were made with toxic materials. Our rivers and streams polluted with the runoff from chemicals. And with urbanization, how frequently were we forced to live in the most unhealthy areas of the city in terms of environmental concern and issues? So, I got a list of oil companies up here. Are there any black-owned oil companies in the U.S. that are responsible for an oil spill the size of the Exxon Valdez or the BP spill? Any black-owned companies or people that you know dumping tons of environmental contaminants into the ocean as they ship plastic toys back and forth from the Atlantic or across the Atlantic? Any black people you know disband the EPA, tell the USDA not to monitor cases of pesticides or open up the Arctic to drilling? Any black folks you know own a 10,000-acre agribusiness farm leading to poop in the runoff, erosion, native plant life destabilization, mistreatment of animals, or any of that? Probably not. It's not to say that on an individual level that we don't all play a role in the environment and our ecological footprint, but I do want to ask, who is the we that's ruined the world? You know, who is the we that's at the center of our outreach campaigns? Now, these are all oil people. 41 billion, this is billions of dollars. It's a lot. Do you see any folks that would have been part of my we in any of these pictures? These folks are very fun. They're doing a good job for the planet right now. That's John Henrik Clark. He's an interesting one. I think he's on the upside. All right, so my entire life outside the world of white conservation and earth-oriented justice, people said, what's wrong with these colonists? This gentleman wrote heavily about the colonial empires of Britain, the Dutch, and whatever else. Why do they cut down all the forests to build factories and exploit the labor of humans in those factories? Why do they hold animals captive in such barbaric conditions? If they plan to later eat the animals, wouldn't it be better if the animals were raised healthier, treated better, and the process of getting food from farm to table is one that focused on nutrition, health, food quality? I grew up with people asking why these international companies make billions of dollars, are allowed to dump right in the ocean. We asked, why won't the politicians stop the corporations from destroying areas of the country that have been abundant with life? Now, this gentleman, John Francis, hiked and didn't speak, I believe, for like 7 years as part of a protest and what was happening. And so when I think of what we are doing, there have been people doing this for who knows how long that are amazing examples of good work. But do we hear about them? Are they the we that are spoken of in conservation circles, right? From another perspective, how come folks don't say that we have been fighting colonial rule for centuries and that we are not complicit in the fuckery we see worldwide? Why don't you say that we should take time to reflect on the strategies that we have been implementing for decades, if not centuries, to work within the system using legal practices, education, financial autonomy, material resources, as well as outside the system using coded language, hidden stratagem, personal networks, solidarity and struggle, ingenuity and perseverance to continue the push for a more peaceful and equitable world, one that includes the planet and our environment being considered as an active member of our universal experience. So again, who is the we? Dick Gregory right there. It's from the workers and union movement with Cesar Chavez. Yeah. Kwame Ture. And so some of the people that I have put up here tie into the history. They aren't the ones I would say you need to follow anything, but they quote, they write the books. I don't have a whole book on the 30 other people who did awesome stuff. all these folks did. Like, all these folks here give a huge, like, breadcrumb trail to where you can get a lot of information. All right, now we get to more fun stuff, taxonomy and nomenclature. So this notion of we, like, why does taxonomy and nomenclature matter? Everyone knows what nomenclature is, taxonomy, like how we name things, how we order and organize things, right? So we can see taxonomy, like the names for animals and phylum, class, order. We understand the human, right? And in a way, it makes sense. So that under hegemony, where like all this arbitrary stuff about like life, well, it's decided by a select few, and those few can enforce that system on others. The truth is produced by those with the ability to coerce its acceptance. So in the biological science, experts have been able to use hooves, feet, teeth, embryonic development, anatomy, gene sequence, other factors as delineators, and it makes sense. Who are we to argue, right? Like, the scientists know what they're talking about. Why are all the names in Latin? It's a dead language amongst the Europeans, but then that gets imposed on all around the world in order to categorize things. Interesting way to use nomenclature and establish cultural hegemony, right? Then at a general level, though, it makes sense. Like, there's a difference between your fungus and human. You can say, all right, you have a spinal cord notch, you don't. But once you get to things that are a bit more fluid, like, is a rabbit a rodent? Anybody know that one?
No.
Is there?
It's a lagomorph. Cavies.
Who said that?
Cavies.
Biologist?
Yeah.
There we go. They have an extra row of teeth. And they do something else, so it's like, well, so it's not a rodent. So there are all these things that once you start getting into specifics, it doesn't necessarily align. Think about the red panda and the panda bear. It was thought that the red panda and panda bear are closer to raccoons. Well, it turns out that the word panda comes from the word bamboo eater in Nepali, where they saw them. And so then when they saw the giant pandas, they're like, ooh, bamboo eater, panda also. They were in no way biologically related. So for who knows how long, people are like, oh, the giant pandas are not bears. They are. They're ursine. And the red panda is actually their own little species. Like, they're not actually part of the raccoon family. But that misunderstanding for years was taught to how many people? Like, in 1986, when I went to the zoo, they were calling the big pandas raccoons, basically, right? So when we think about nomenclature and how we name and organize things and how we create our order in our lives, we might want to question that sometimes, right? And how we name and categorize our experiences, as well as the instruments or tools we have at hand to understand phenomena, are all important variables to consider when thinking about how we define our we and in what position of relation we holds in reference to others. All right? Are we in a situation where we can coerce acceptance of our definitions, or in 2025 is the power held by a limited few scientists, or are we in a world of social media, print media, and opinion validation via bias bubbles? How will we establish what truth is? And right now, there's all types of misinformation floating around. All right, which gets us to Wittgenstein. Everyone knows about Wittgenstein? So as a philosopher, he believed language confuses people because misunderstandings arise from taking words out of their usual context and applying them in ways they're not designed for. I could get into the meaning and use, language games, context critical, but basically, we don't actually always know what we're saying. That, like, we're taught our emotions have a word to associate. What if we're taught? Like, I'm crying, and someone, stop being mad. I'm not mad. I'm actually, like, heartbroken. I'm actually frustrated because I've tried, which means I'm exhausted. But I don't learn the language for describing my emotions, so then how do I describe them to another person? Well, what if they learned a different definition, and my use of a word triggers an emotional response unrelated to what I anticipated? How many of us can think of spending hours writing something, 2 weeks later you come back and look at it and like, this isn't what I meant to write. What was I doing? You're in a conversation with someone, talk 12 minutes, and you're like, I just can't find the words. We've been talking for 12 minutes. If language is such a great tool of communication, how come we're constantly saying, it's not working right? And so Wittgenstein kind of drills down on that. So I do think language is important. I don't want to then say there is no meaning or anything like that. But I think that the truth is cloudy, muddy, fraught with obstacles and blockades to being shared. And that language being important, a major element is to identify how we name and then categorize the phenomena. Because we keep asking this question, why aren't more people active and engaged in the conversations we want to have? I see a lot of this. Is anything getting communicated that isn't already known here? And I don't mean like what's wrong with like us as organizations or us personally in trying to communicate, but why are people disinterested in more than the surface level conversation? Or what can we do to be more conscious stewards of our conversations, if that makes sense, right? And it seems like part of the contemporary practice, is to convince everyone that they are part of the problem. That if they work with us, we can solve the problem that we have created, directly or indirectly. In order for action, everyone must be converted into an adherent. So how does that sound to a black person? Like, did we start the problem? And do white people know how to fix everything in the country? How well have they done the past 400 years? Now, keep in mind, where I grew up, we discussed the following. How have humans been social and living with each other for 100,000 years? And in just the last 1,000 years, the colonial Europeans have figured out how to almost destroy the world. Again, who is the we? This begs another question. Who are the colonial Europeans? Are you included in that we? What is your responsibility to the history? Now, remember, I had questions. These are the questions that you don't answer today. These are the ones that stick with you as you do work and as you tell people you are interested in being a full human and want to work with diverse communities. Asking yourself, am I being an extension of a colonial enterprise? Am I being extractive? Am I being disconnected? Am I being more analytical than engaged? And thinking about, is there a benefit to asking that question? Where do we see ourselves in the matrix of blame? Should we feel guilty? Now, again, that's for you to figure out. I don't feel guilty. Every time an environmental justice person begins to ask and harangue and harass me, I think to myself, like, are you serious as a black person? I'm still trying to get people to learn and understand American history so they stop treating people that look like me as animals. I've had to oppose elements of political, social, economic, academic authority, and status quo my entire life just to retain my humanity. I'm not complicit in my engagement with the world. I've not had that luxury. I've had to be purposeful with how I engage with the world at large, including the environment. And so any guilt I have is around the fact that I can't figure out how to give more people the same opportunities I had in life. I don't look at myself in opposition to the universe, the planet, or other people. Now, can I do more to be a better steward of lands I occupy? Yes. Can I do more to be in harmony with the universe and nature? Yeah. Can I do more to work with fellow humans to bring about a world that's less polluted, healthier, cleaner? Yes. But will telling me that I'm killing the world motivate me? No. No. It'll just make me think, you don't know what you're talking about, you should leave me alone. And it'll make me say, me and my folks are putting in work, and you still haven't figured out who the real problem is. And then there's the methodology, the fear tactics. The apocalyptic scare tactics, lighter hyperbolic, doomsday messaging in order to spur action. In the US, you want to get someone to do something, you show them like a hurt puppy and sad music, and then they'll donate. Instead of like puppy running in the field with like happiness, then maybe people support it. I don't know why we have to do that. We're going to hell in a handbasket to motivate action, but I wonder if it's effective. If we're in a state of pushing everyone into fight, flight, but we need reason and conscientiousness and thinking, how does shock treatment elicit that? If we need people to be almost as reasonable and thoughtful as possible, how is shocking them into, you're destroying our future, get the result that we want? I'm not quite sure. Now, I do understand why people need to know the importance. I do understand how using this type of material can inspire action. But some of the hyperbolic language, when people say Donald Trump's the worst president ever, go talk to an old black person. If they're like, yo, 14 presidents had slaves, like Zachary Taylor killed off how many Native folks? How are we going to say something's the worst? Or is it an extension of what we've been fighting for who knows how long? So maybe it's not time to freak out. If you're not-for-profit and you're worried about your jobs, your grants, your funding, talk to an old black person. Ask them, what do we do now the government is all bad? Don't be surprised if they say, now? We keep working, we strategize, we learn, we work together. We don't cave. Talk to them about burnout. And this is a real statement. I've told folks, go talk to some old black people. And they look at me like, oh, you're joking. I'm not. And part of that is because there's these things that we're experiencing now are not new. And in my life, the people that were able to convey that information and help give support and persistence in resistance were the old black folks in my life. And when you talk about burnout, which is real, and what it's like to push for social justice your entire life and what progress looks like, Ask them what they did to remain strident in their commitment to justice. Talk to them about how they organized and the history of organization under an oppressive and violent regime. From quilt makers that hid maps, to religious ceremonies that were freedom rallies, to cookouts that were also planning sessions, forced subterfuge, secret schools to teach folks how to read. How many practices intended to preserve humanity and improve our experience had to be developed under the threat of authoritarian rule? What's new about now? And so in our time period, isn't much different when the whalers almost drove certain species to extinction for the oil. It's much different than what people have done for the commercial benefits in the past. And is it really the most dangerous time on Earth? Is it really the worst time to be alive? And so instead of being nondescriptive and a ubiquitous anonymous black person, I use my grandmother as an exemplar. What would my grandmother say if you said, the government won't let us teach the truth in schools? She'd probably say, well, why would you want the government to teach you anything? That's why we started our own school, and even if we only teach 15 kids a year, we're doing something to affect change in the lives of people in our community every single day. If we don't look out for young black folks, nobody will. If you said the corporations treat us like animals, exploit our labor, they don't give us what we're owed, she'll say, of course they will. What's your plan? How do you use what's available to you to make a life, to take care of your family and find meaning? It's on you to do so. Now, what do you think would happen if you said, Grandma Banks, you really need to install a composter and recycle better and do more to limit your carbon footprint, or you're part of the problem when it comes to caring about our planet? What do you think she'd say to you? Right? And at the end of it, in my life, we know that if you don't do it, if your friends don't do it, if your family don't do it, if the homies don't do it, if the community doesn't do it, if people that you don't know and never will meet don't do it, it won't get done. The government won't help, and the corporate-driven profit motive will not help. That's part of how slavery even happened. So in this message, what makes me hopeful, like here's the fun part, what makes me hopeful is I challenge y'all to conjure some narratives of positivity, of joy, of excitement when you think of conservation, when you think of preservation. And I understand why we have to have these signs. I understand why this happens. But people have been gathering and celebrating for a long time. And I'd like us to imagine and think about the folks who have used human interconnectedness and been involved in trying to have a more positive impact in our global system, right? And what can we learn from them? What has worked? What is working? And what makes me most hopeful is that we haven't exhausted all the options. I'd be terrified if we tried everything. If we had cut back on carbon emissions, stopped polluting the oceans, put a moratorium on plastic use, regulated corporate waste, found sources for truly green and renewable energy, and the animals and planets still suffered. If people were conscientious and it didn't work. But right now, we barely scratch the surface on what we can do. And so I want y'all to think. I went longer than I expected. I thought we'd be able to
4 minutes.
But in this last 4 minutes, what I'd like you to do is close your eyes and think about your initial emotional event, issue, or experience that let you know you cared about nature, the planet, conservation, environmental justice. Not how you got your job or picked a profession, but go to that place, like seriously, if you can, you're safe in here. No one's gonna slap you around because you close your eyes. If you close your eyes and you think, like, what was that thing that let me know, like, I'm a part of this earth, not like separated, it's not nature versus human, that this is me, this is us, and that I'm supposed to be an advocate, that like part of my inherent role is to be a protector of what protects me. And think about that and kind of sit with that and get past some of the where we are now parts, but going back to that childlike passion, joy, acceptance, and unbridled enthusiasm. And if you can, in the next couple minutes, start thinking about what are 3 organizations or groups of people from your past, run by queer folks, run by women, run by black folks, Latinx folks, undocumented folks, combination of the above, intersectionality, that successfully campaigned or took action on an environment justice issue? How did they do outreach? How did they raise money? How do they resonate with community? And when we live in a world where, no offense to anyone who might be in the room, the budget for Greenpeace USA, $40 million. Budget for Sierra Club, $144 million. Nature Conservancy, $1.2 billion. Wildlife Conservation, $374 million. San Diego Zoo Wildlife Alliance, $390 million. That's like billions of dollars, which looks like it's been allocated for a lot of white folks to have jobs. I don't want to dwell on that. I want to dwell on, regardless of whatever people's backgrounds are, whatever their ethnic history is, who are the people who do the work? What are the organizations that when you think of, when you're actually inspired, Who's out there who's been doing the work, whether it's 50, 60 years ago, whether it's 40 years ago, or it's 100 years ago. And when we start getting afraid and like, Donald Trump is, wait. Mama Jenkins was doing this back in, all right, we can handle this. Like back when did it happen? Oh, okay, we can handle this. And to really root down in that and to think about our we is that when I think of we, I include y'all in the group of humans. And so we have been living together for a million years pretty well. And all the colonists want to say, well, humans inherently are racist and inherently hate each other and humans, that's not true. What it looks like is a very small number of people decided to be hella aggressive and ridiculous, and the colonists celebrated that. The colonists are like, look at the Romans, look at the Trojans, look at the Spartans, they didn't say, look at those peaceful people that lived with each other for 200,000 years. Look at the people right now who are like, I could participate in whatever madness y'all are doing. We don't want it. Keep it over there. We don't bring it here. And to have that attachment, and when we say we, to be a bit more conscientious and purposeful, and that knowing like, I want this message to resonate, I had to stop opening up my conversations with, hey guys, how y'all doing? It's not all guys in the room. And I could take the, well, why should I? Or I could say, I want to talk to people. And so I should be conscientious of who the we is. If I'm saying we need to do stuff, we have to work together. We should have a regional partnership. Which we? And I would love to hear your thoughts. Like I hoped I'd finish 10 minutes earlier so I could actually have a Q&A with y'all. But at any point, if there are organizations you want to teach me about, if there are people I should know about, if there are people that excited you, if you remember when you were 6 years old and somebody grabbed you by the hand and took you somewhere and you were like, oh my goodness, look at the waterfall. That I need to be reminded that real people care about this stuff. I am overwhelmed with bureaucracy. I'm overwhelmed with administrative. Let's have a phone call, to have a meeting, to have an email about having a meeting, to have a phone call to talk about what we're going to do to get the kids out. We need to do something to get the kids out, make it interesting to kids. Whoa, what do you mean making it? We're the experts. Oh, my God. What are we going to do? What were you doing? And to figure out, there has to be a way for us to exist without the federal government controlling all of our decisions. The number of people I've met that write grants knowing where the money comes from, and they have a mission, and then they have to write a grant. And those two things are not always a nice little overlap. I need to find where is the overlap in the money and the people who are able to be honest about what they do and where it's worked. Now, I don't mean successful, but where for them, in their fulfillment, in their heart, in the community you're supposed to serve, in the people that are supposed to be activated, it worked. And I only am going to get that from you all. Y'all are the ones who are out there who meet way more people than I can meet. It's 30 people in here. So if y'all can, to think about that history, think about the past, think about our forebearers and the people, the ancestors, and the folks who have been putting in the work. And then when we talk about we, not forget that. And I get the doomsday. I get there's a need to wake up. There's also like a need to be like, thank you. Like, I see you. We're going to keep working and share, if that makes sense.
Oh, thank you so much, Chris.
Yeah.
It is, so there is a 15-minute